What? Yeah. No, I'm behaving myself. No, I'm not playing in abandoned buildings. What? Again? Now, I suppose you had those people follow me again. Fine. Hey, this is Jimmy Farrow from Monty and the Pharaoh, and I want to thank all our subscribers. We have now passed 14,000 on our YouTube channel. But I want to ask our subscribers to take the next step for us and become a full-fledged member of Monty and the Pharaoh. Yeah, that's right, folks. There's 3 different levels to choose from. There's free shirts. There's free autographs. Just check it out and become a member of Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh. Later.
For me, I will shoulder the burden of a difficult talent or a rude talent.
Okay.
If when they sit down and the red light goes on, they give the product.
Right.
If they give the designated product, if it's a timeline where they did they have details about the events we brought up, did they bring a dimension to the show? If it's you shoot, were they uncensored? Did they roll with the jokes? If it's a guest booker, did they produce some creative decisions or let us inside their booking mind in the process? Then that's the tacit agreement. Nowhere in my paperwork did I say you have to be nice to me. But I did say you got to deliver a show. And so if the show is there, I was okay with dealing with difficult talent. Where the thing I didn't have patience for was if they sat on camera and took a shit as opposed to put on a show.
Now,
so that I would have a real problem with. And it didn't happen.
Right, because obviously you're paying the talent. They do a giant shit. You're trying to make a DVD. Are you like, well, fuck you, I ain't paying you? Did you ever have that kind of confrontation?
No, the only person I asked for money back was Jake Roberts. He came to, we were going to do an episode of Breaking Kayfabe, which was a series that dealt with the outside the ring life of the talent. Folks that had interesting things to talk about in their personal lives. So we sat down with Jake, who I booked through DDP. And I told him we were going to talk about his family history and everything on that show. So we sit down, he's paid, we're under the lights, the slate's in, we start the show. And after a couple of questions, he goes, I'm not talking about my family. I said, Jake, I have nothing on these cards about the DDT. I have to tell you this right now. That's what this show is. And he wouldn't do it. And he protested, and we argued a while. I said, Jake, come outside, have a smoke. Let me talk to you about this. I wanted to engender that trust. We'd never worked together before. And I was always pretty quickly able to engender trust. If I have a superpower as an interviewer, it's that, I guess. I don't think of questions that are necessarily innovative or different than anyone else does, but in sitting with somebody for a few minutes, I can put them at ease. It's not
good.
It's not a carny thing. I think they sensed that I was truthfully there not to fuck them, but rather to make them the most interesting interview they could be, and to have the most interesting product for myself.
There you go.
So I said, Jake, spend some time with me. Come outside. Let me talk to you about this. No. Can't do it. Now, in fairness to Jake, he had just started the program with DDP and was clean. And I think from an emotional standpoint, he was not going to be able to talk about Grizzly Smith and a lot of what went on there. So at a certain point, he was refusing. I said, drop the money and I'll have my guy take you home, take you to the hotel. And he did. Dropped the money on the table, left, and I had him driven home. And that was that. Buff Bagwell famously was not able to perform the interview. I gave him a couple $100 and said, listen, let's get it another time. Don't worry about it. I don't want to put you on camera like this. I think he was just very tired that night.
Well, but listen, Buff's a personal friend. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
You know what? Everybody's got their demons. I judge not. But one thing too, you were talking
Let me
about
finish.
Oh, go ahead.
So I said, Marcus, and he got very upset that I kept that twice. I had to stop the interview and say, I can't do this with you. He wanted another chance. He said he'd kick out. I said, all right, kick out. Good. We give him some time. Second time was no better. And I said, listen, I can't do this. I said, but Marcus, here's some money. Don't worry about it. We'll you come back. We'll do it again. I have the script. We'll shoot your timeline another time. So he was emotional, and my guys helped him back out and back to his hotel. And he called me the next morning. He was like, hey, I'm sorry, brother. Just a rough night last night, and just want you to please keep that promise to bring me out and get the show. I said, man, that money I put in your hand, I consider a deposit. So yeah, I'm going to bring you back. And about 6 months later, I saw he was coming back, and I called him and I said, let's get that interview. And he said, well, sorry, brother. He said, they're doing a documentary on me, so I don't do that shooting shit anymore for no money. And I said, okay. I said, I want to remind you that I'm the guy that sat there while you drooled on my fucking camera for 2 hours and put some money in your hand and said, don't worry about it, I'll bring you back. To which he said that in return for that, he would punch my teeth down my throat when he saw me in New Jersey next.
Very nice.
I start
Very
nice. One of my books with this story.
Wow.
Well,
it's a favorite.
I might have to retract that statement, sir. I do
fuck?
have to apologize. I would not think that he would have acted like that.
That's fucked up.
But let's go to something you talked about, people trusting you. One of your greatest interviews was the Roddy Piper, Pat Patterson revelation. How taken aback were you from that, or did you know this was coming?
No idea. It didn't even make sense to me when he was telling. I couldn't get my mind around it because I'm like, where were they together? California? He's telling me, and I even reached out afterwards to Dave Meltzer. I wrote him. I said, I got something on tape the other day, and have you ever heard anything about this? And he hadn't. And he said the timeline was a little wonky. Roddy mentions, the Olympic Auditorium in L.A. When he was 15 or 16. Listen, on the set, who might argue with him? I wasn't there for it. So I know Connecticut wasn't very happy with it. And at the time, they were promoting Legends House, where Roddy and Pat were together.
Right.
And I know they reached out to Roddy and said, you better go on some shows and talk about how you were wrong about this. Or maybe they
were you contacted?
Because I heard him go on and try to retract it on another show.
Were you contacted by any chance by
it's very clear. What's that?
Were you contacted by any chance by WWE? Like, take that thing down?
What are they going to say to me? I sat there, and he was on an interview show. He told me his story, and that was it.
Right.
I didn't put him on in a lie detector.
Yeah.
My programming would have been terrible if I put wrestlers in lie detectors.
Of course. Of course. I'm just wondering if they had called you and given you some shit about it, like take that down.
No, never
Interesting.
called me.
You ever speak to Vince McMahon
Though,
in person?
what's that?
Ever speak to Vince McMahon? Do you ever?
No, I'm still waiting for the interview. He'd get a great interview out of me.
There you go.
I wouldn't skewer him. I wouldn't even want to talk about the stuff that people are going to. I don't really care whether Mel Phillips was licking anyone's toes in the '80s. I would want to talk to him about the rise in '84.
The rise of Mel Phillips.
No doubt there was a rise in Mel Phillips.
I'm sorry.
But I would want to talk about the rise of the company.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
just how that all came together, the Cyndi Lauper and Hogan and the merchandising and buying out the cable the smaller stations and going national. I could spend 5 hours talking to him about 1983, 4, and 5 in WWE. So Vince, when you call, that's what we're going to cover.
There you go.
Right, don't worry about it. I don't care about
see it.
$12 million checks, whatever's going on over there. I don't care.
Toe licking, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what do you think, big guy? Should we take a break, or do you want to keep going?
Just keep going.
We'll just
we're gonna
keep
go
going
to the
then.
end.
I just want to ask you while I got you, our personal favorite interview, we got to interview Bob Backlund. Do you have a favorite interview? Is there anything that, makes your all warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum, as has been said?
The Roddy one that you mentioned, I have a soft spot for because I was such a Roddy Piper mark as a kid. I valued the workers that were captivating and charismatic on the microphone. I don't care that Roddy had a 4-move set. That it wasn't important to me. And guess what? It wasn't important to all the arenas he was selling out and the pay-per-views, including the first WrestleMania, which put WWE on the map as far as that format went, the periodic pay-per-view. So the Piper interview was special for me just because I was a fan, and I could have conducted that entire thing without notes, just remembering the time that he had in WWE. So I thought that was a fabulous interview, not just because I'm such a mark for him, but because I thought it ended up being a great product too. A lot of the ones I like, guys, were not the best sellers. They weren't the ones that are all over YouTube now. Mm-hmm. The Tony Atlas you shoot, I found wildly entertaining. And not just because of his pronunciation of many of the words. I thought he was funny and charismatic and personable, and watching him react to some of these fan videos was classic. I so enjoyed that. The Lanny Poffo's you shoot and Breaking Kayfabe. As a fan, I'm talking. As a producer, my favorite shows were the ones that made money.
Sure.
Period.
Makes sense.
Period.
Makes sense.
Cornette, Nash, Russo, all the ones that you might suspect made tens of thousands of dollars. Those were my favorite.
What was your biggest seller?
Oh God, I'd have to be making a guess now because my eyes have been off the ledgers for a while. Okay. Maybe Cornette's first guest booker, because that kind of it was his first appearance with us. He'd been on a couple of other shoot interviews before, but in the guest booker format, he shined, and it was like the rebirth of Jim Cornette. And then, so we brought him back for, he did 2 U-shoots, he did a Breaking Kayfabe, there are a handful of talent that could have done all of our formatted shows. Timeline, you had to be working near the top of a card or in the office to be able to talk about an entire year in a company. Guest booker, you had to be a booker for a major territory. U-shoot, you've got to be a lightning rod, entertaining, be able to elicit a passionate fan response for all the questions. Breaking Kayfabe, have an interesting off-screen life. Cornette checked all those boxes, so he was able to do all of our shows. So I will attribute the resurgence in his popularity to his work with Kayfabe commentaries.
There you go.
Sean, being a fan first, before you got into all of this, being a fan of pro wrestling, How far into it were you before the fan itself? Now you're getting to meet obviously people you loved growing up, or whatever the case may be. You look up to these guys, I would think, to a degree. We all do as fans. At any point, how far into it, after meeting some of these guys and seeing the reality of some of these guys instead of just the on-screen character, did that screw you up as a fan? Because I know it's messed with me a little
No,
bit.
it was
bit.
right away that it became a business because there was too much at stake
Okay.
to be starstruck. I was in the entertainment business for a long time
Right.
before that, so
Right.
I'd worked with famous people before, so it wasn't a starstruck thing. What it did do was when I sat down in the interview spot, if I was able to access the fan in me, if I knew the talent I was sitting with from my days watching them, it made for a better interview. So the interview was more entertaining. I was able to find follow-up questions and talk about things beyond the research that we had on paper, because I might have remembered this person from my
Sure.
days as a fan.
Yeah.
So I guess that dimension was accentuated a bit, but there was no coming down moment for me where I was disappointed to learn somebody smelled like ass, or
That's not what I meant.
like
This guy smells like
shattered
ass. I'm
when
not rooting for him anymore. not like that.
yeah, it's like, God damn, I was a kid, I cheered for this guy, and he smells like a fucking yak's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah. That would be
But
unfortunate. Holy turnbuckle.
yeah, sure.
Hey.
So listen, the wrestling business and these guys navigating the world. There's a lot of comedy
Right.
in watching these guys navigate the world. I love, one of my favorite things is when they use wrestler speak to describe real world non-wrestling situations. It's one of the more amusing things. I just co-authored Todd Gordon's autobiography, Todd is God, which will be out next summer.
How did that come to be? Because it's almost like you walked into the next question. How does that all come about with Todd?
Well, I'll get to that in 1 second. Let me just grab the story here.
Sure.
Bill Alfonso, who's been a referee everywhere, and he's got the business so ingrained in his soul. If you cut him and he bled, it probably a red, white, and blue rope would fall out from under his skin. He's one of these guys that uses not carny, but wrestling terms for everything. One of my favorite stories in the book, they pull up to a